All prisoners were about to be executed, until the little girl pointed at the human. The rain fell in sheets across the detention platform, each drop hissing against the hot metal surface like whispered warnings. Commander Vex'thar stood before the line of prisoners, her 3 eyes scanning the pathetic creatures chained before her. 27 beings from a dozen worlds, all captured during the Resistance's failed assault on the mining colony of Kepler 442b. Today, Vex'thar announced, her voice amplified across the platform, the Zorathian Empire demonstrates what happens to those who defy our rule. The prisoners swayed in their chains, exhausted and broken. They had been here for 3 days without food or water, displayed as an example to the colony's workers who gathered in the valley below. Thousands of enslaved beings watched from behind the energy barriers, forced to witness this spectacle. Among the prisoners stood Marcus Chen, the only human in the lineup. He kept his head down, trying to make himself invisible. Humans were rare this far from Earth. Most had been wiped out when the Zorathians glassed the colonies during the initial invasion. Marcus had survived only because he'd been working on a deep space freighter when his homeworld fell. That was 5 years ago. Since then, he'd drifted from one edge of the galaxy to another, trying to stay alive in a universe that had become infinitely more dangerous. He hadn't meant to join the Resistance. He'd simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in a supply depot when the rebels attacked. The Zorathians didn't care about innocence or guilt. If you were there, you were complicit. Vex'thar moved down the line, stopping before each prisoner. You, she said to a Krell warrior, his blue skin marked with battle scars. You led the attack on the Eastern refinery. 17 of my soldiers died. The Krell said nothing, his jaw set defiantly. Execute him, Vex'thar ordered. A Zorathian guard raised his plasma rifle. The Krell closed his eyes. The shot came quick, a flash of blue light, and the warrior crumpled to the platform floor. The crowd below gasped, a sound like wind through a canyon. Vex'thar continued down the line. One by one, she pronounced judgment. One by one, the prisoners fell. The rain mixed with blood, creating pink rivers that ran between the metal grating. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. He was 10th in line, maybe 9th now. He counted the shots, each one bringing death closer. His hands trembled in their restraints. He'd always wondered how he would face death when it came. Now he was about to find out. The prisoner next to him, a Viridian with green scaled skin, began to pray in her native language. Marcus didn't understand the words, but he recognized the tone. They were the same prayers his mother used to whisper when the war first came to Earth. Vex'thar stopped in front of him. Her 3 eyes studied him with cold curiosity. A human, she said, almost surprised. I thought we'd killed all of you. Marcus met her gaze, refusing to look away. If he was going to die, he'd die with whatever dignity he had left. Nothing to say? Vex'thar asked. No final words? No pleas for mercy? Would it matter? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse from thirst. A thin smile crossed Vex'thar's face. No, it wouldn't. She raised her hand to signal the guard. Wait. The voice was small but piercing, cutting through the sound of rain and the murmur of the crowd. Everyone turned to see a young Krell girl, no more than 7 or 8 in human years, running across the platform. Her blue skin was lighter than the warrior who had died first, a child's skin, not yet darkened by exposure to harsh suns. 2 guards moved to intercept her, but she was fast, sliding under their reaching arms. She ran straight to the line of prisoners, her bare feet slapping against the wet metal. She stopped directly in front of Marcus, her large eyes fixed on him with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone so young. This one, she cried, pointing at Marcus. This one saved us. Vex'thar's expression darkened. Child, return to the observation area immediately. No. The girl's voice carried across the platform. He saved us. When the bombs fell on the eastern quarter, he pulled us from the rubble. My mother, my brother, me. He saved us all. Marcus stared at the girl, his mind racing. He did remember that day 3 weeks ago. The Resistance had bombed a Zorathian supply depot, but their intelligence had been wrong. The building had been converted to housing for Krell workers. When Marcus heard the screams, he'd run toward the destruction while others ran away. He'd spent hours digging through the debris, pulling out survivors. Is this true? Vex'thar demanded, looking at Marcus. Yes, Marcus said. But I didn't know they were. He saved 43 people that day, the girl continued, her voice shaking but determined. 43 of us who would have died. My mother wanted to thank him, but he disappeared before she could. A murmur ran through the crowd below. Marcus saw other Krell pushing forward, their voices joining the girls. He helped rebuild my home, one shouted. He shared his rations with my family, called another. He taught my son to read. More voices joined, creating a chorus that grew louder with each passing second. Marcus stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. He'd done those things, yes, but they were small acts, barely worth remembering. He'd simply done what he thought was right, what any decent person would do. Vex'thar's 3 eyes narrowed. She looked from Marcus to the crowd, then back to the girl who still stood defiantly before the human, her small body a shield between him and death. Commander, one of her advisors said quietly, the crowd is growing agitated. If we execute this one now, after the child's testimony. Vex'thar was silent for a long moment. The rain continued to fall, and the other prisoners watched with desperate hope in their eyes. Release him, Vex'thar finally said, her voice tight with suppressed anger. The guard looked confused. Commander? Release the human. She turned to face the crowd, her voice booming. Let it be known that the Zorathian Empire recognizes honor, even in our enemies. This human has shown valor in saving Krell lives. He is pardoned. The chains fell from Marcus's wrists. He stumbled forward, his legs weak from days of standing. The Krell girl caught his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his. Thank you, she whispered. For my mother. For all of us. Marcus looked down at her, then out at the faces in the crowd. Faces that had been strangers, now revealed as lives he'd touched without even knowing. He thought of all the small choices he'd made, the tiny acts of kindness that had seemed so insignificant at the time. As the guards led him away from the execution platform, away from the death he'd been certain would claim him, Marcus understood something he'd never quite grasped before. In a universe of empires and wars, of grand strategies and cosmic battles, it was the smallest acts that mattered most. A hand extended to pull someone from rubble. A ration shared with a hungry family. A child taught to read. These were the things that saved worlds. Behind him, the executions continued, and Marcus's heart ached for those he couldn't save. But the girl's hand remained in his, warm and alive, a reminder that even in the darkest places, hope survived. And sometimes, just sometimes, hope was enough.